Welcome guys, it's that time where we go through and rate each and every one of the drivers, how they got on over the Brazilian Grand Prix. And well, it was an absolute classic for this man. Right up at the front, number one, which is a massive surprise, Max Verstappen from P17. It was an incredible race from him, wasn't it? To make up 5 places on the start was absolutely amazing. The way he just drove around everybody at the outside of turn 3, we've seen him do that in the past in previous years. It's a line that only he tends to take, to be honest with you. We've not seen many others try that. He seems to just find a lot more purchase and speed out of that around the outside of everybody. Took, what, 3 cars in one corner, which was just incredible. He was an absolute charge. And the fact that when it came down to it, when he got up to the back of sort of P4 and he was starting to struggle to pass cars a little bit, the Ferrari, Charles Leclerc and the like, and the Yuki Tsunoda train, he was only 10 seconds behind the leaders, which was absolutely incredible in a race like that. I mean, there was bound to be, considering how many safety cars and red flags we'd had earlier in the day, 5, and there was bound to be more in the race with the really tricky conditions. I mean, it was absolutely tremendous. Yes, the red flag safety car really worked in his favour, but it was a gamble only he was prepared to take. He took it, and it, well, all quids, and he wasn't the only man to do that. Other teams decided to do that, and look at the results that they pulled off. I mean, George Russell was fuming his team didn't take suit of what Red Bull did, but from there on was absolutely tremendous. Right up into P2, and then he looked like he was going to struggle to pass Esteban Ocon, didn't he, at one point, especially after the first safety car restart. I mean, he lost about 3 or 4 seconds to Ocon, who was actually quicker than him, and that was quite surprising because it just looked like it would be easy to take the Alpines, but the Alpines had really good pace in the wet conditions. But then he made the move on the second restart. I think he really caught Ocon by surprise. We've seen them two tangle there before, haven't we? And he really was decisive. Lap 48, took the lead, and then 17 fastest lap. Yes, you heard that right. 17 fastest laps after that. It was absolutely tremendous. I mean, the contrast of emotions of what he's had. He had the VSC penalty in the sprint race. He then had the qualifying red flag, which come out, 40 seconds after the incident. You can hear my thoughts on the qualifying review on that front, but he was just gone from absolute zero to, the swing was just incredible in the championship. If you look at qualifying, Q1 and Q2 of qualifying, it looked like Lando Norris would be the man out. It then turned and Max Verstappen was the man out and lining up effectively near last, 17th on the grid. And it was really like, this is, absolutely what Lando Norris in the championship needed. He could have seen a big point swing, but Max Verstappen with one hell of a drive. On the side of my notes, I've just put 10,000 out of 10. It was absolutely brilliant drive. One of them where we'd look back over the years and say this was absolutely masterful. 2016, others have said his Brazil drive was brilliant, but in a day where we were in Brazil and you thought about Senna and his Donington lap, just come back to mind, didn't it? Max Verstappen was tremendous. Senna-esque. It was absolutely fantastic, phenomenal, brilliant, fantastic. You just name any superlative you can. He was absolutely that Max Verstappen, and shown why he is a real, true, great world champion. And it's going to take an awful lot to take any championship off him. We know he's not had the fastest car. 10 races without a win. He just come back, and this car was actually really good for a change, wasn't it? It really worked around Brazil. He was hanging on there or thereabouts in the sprint race in the dry, but in the rain he was just something else. More than 10 out of 10 if I can give him that, but brilliant from Max Verstappen. Words just cannot describe what he pulled off. Was mega. And then coming on to the next ones were, just even more insane, isn't it? Esteban Ocon finished in second place, started in fourth, and well, you never thought that would happen, would you? It was, decent pace. He was right close up to Yuki Tsunoda in the early parts of that race. And then he just did really, really well to keep P1, which was so surprising. Like I said, even to keep up with Yuki and keep drivers behind. There was no DRS sort of and I think that probably helped them an awful lot, keep them positions, made it overtaking it a little bit more difficult for everyone behind, because normally we see DRS open down into turn 1, the classic overtaking move, and it's always normally then a matter of time, and if it's not there, down to turn 4. But yeah, he drove brilliantly well. The strategy call was brilliant, worked out again fantastically well for him, and then he was leading so competently. The fact is, he's left now 14 laps, more laps led than Sergio Perez, which is an absolute joke of a stat, isn't it? But Ocon can just be massively proud. It looked like he was just checking out for the season, wasn't he? Had a couple of poor results when Pierre Gasly was really, outperforming that car, getting up into the top 10 positions, especially in qualifying, bringing home a couple of points last time out. And Ocon was the man, sort of, you're thinking, where's his head really at? But he's shown it. He's a true racer, a tremendous second place for Alpine, and massive haul of points for the whole team. I've got to give him a 10 out of 10. Third place, Pierre Gasly, another one. I mean, he made up 10 places from his 13th place start to finish in third. Again, the safety car really kind of helped him there. The red flag, really brought him up into the positions. But like I say, you make your own luck, and you've got to bear it out. People went into the wets, and they were actually quite quick, weren't they? But these guys hung it out, risked the chance of dropping it and losing it and coming away with, your tail between your legs, trying to be the smart one. But absolutely hung on. A brilliant 3-2 for Alpine. It was, more than they could probably ever have hoped for. All Christmas, everything, New Year's, all wrapped up in birthdays, everything all wrapped up into one for the Alpine team, for Pierre Gasly as well. A 10 out of 10, now up to P6 in the Constructors, which is absolutely huge. It's now a real battle between Haas and them, isn't it, to try and nick and keep hold of that place. But for move up from P9, they were looking like they were in a battle with Williams, and now with this haul of points, it can all change. We don't know what's going to happen in the remaining 3 races, but very unlikely you see anything as crazy as this. But who knows? Anything can happen. We didn't really predict them doing this in Brazil. Anything can just spear on its head going into the future. But it's races like this and days like this where you need to make total advantage, and these boys absolutely did that. A 10 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. 4th place finish for George Russell, and he was absolutely fuming with the team, wasn't he, for the call to come into the pits. He had a tremendous start, right up on the inside, took Lando Norris right on the line, and then from there on, 30 laps, really in control of this race. A couple of more laps had he held out, and he would have been the absolute beneficiary of that. No places lost. It would have worked perfectly well for him. And who knows, could he have held on for the win? George was the only Mercedes that was unsung, wasn't he, in this race? But ultimately, I think a decent job despite the setbacks, to come back and finish 4th place. But I think he'll still be kicking himself to lead into turn 1, to lead for so many laps. He'll be really annoyed with himself. He got Norris on the safety car restart as well, didn't he? Just to make up for good measure, and then he couldn't get past Pierre Gasly in the end. Was about a second off the back of him, harrying him around all the rest of the circuit. Just couldn't get on the podium. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 because I think that car wasn't great, but George really pulled it off and did actually a very good, solid job for the team. 5th place finish for Charles Leclerc, and it's not been a great weekend for the Ferrari boys, have they? They kind of really struggled. Started in 6th, he made up 1 place with a pass on Liam Lawson. From there onwards, though, didn't really make any real impression on the race. I thought he'd be better and closer up to the RBs at the early stages, and then I thought he'd really attack probably Russell and the Alpines. I'm surprised both Russell and Leclerc weren't so close and all over the back of the Alpines, considering the cars that they are in, and especially Ferrari, considering they have got a good car. But in the rain, in Brazil, it just really didn't quite come together for them at all. But yeah, he can be fairly happy. A bit of damage limitation. He's beaten the 2 McLarens. It's probably the best they could have hoped for this weekend. But Ferrari, yes, they'll be hoping for better next time out. It's not been a great weekend for the team. This time, I'm going for a 6 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. 6th place man, Lando Norris, and from pole position, where you just had all the opportunity in the world to really take a massive lead in the championship, it just went horribly wrong, didn't it? After a perfect sprint race. Sunday couldn't have gone any worse. well, Sunday race couldn't have gone worse. Started on pole, was brilliant for him in qualifying. Just managed to squeeze through. Again, didn't lead the first lap despite being on pole, beaten into the first corner by George Russell, and then from there on wasn't really over the back of George Russell either. Didn't really look like he'd have the pace. I think there was one opportunity he made a mistake, but it's been a sloppy race from Lando Norris. He pitted at the end of the VSC, where it was just coming to a close. I think that was a little bit, again, another mistake from the team, which they keep on doing this. Is this the sort of what we seen Red Bull do before they went on and win in 21? They're making these sloppy mistakes and letting the championship leaders off the hook with these decisions. We've seen them do all season long, and this was again another one. But the driver was also calling to come into the pits, quite early on, wasn't he? Saying, look, we need to pit, change the tyres, try something different possibly, but it just couldn't have get any worse for him. From there on, he just couldn't get any close to Charles Leclerc either, even after that poor sort of change. Got the switch up with a call to pass Piastri, but from there on was slow. We had the mistake at the restart and nearly completely took out someone in front of him and escaped to live to fight another day. But too many mistakes from his side and the teams. I think it was a bit a bit cheeky what he said that Lando and Max Verstappen was lucky with the safety car. Yes, he was, but you create your own luck. But from there on, 17 fastest lap, and to put himself in that position for Max Verstappen was more than pure luck. Just accept it. It was sort of a bit sore loser sort of vibes at the end of that in his interviews, but I kind of expect that a little bit. But yeah, I think he should just be a bit better than that. Max Verstappen was just a better man on the day. Norris really struggled. A horrible weekend for him and the championship, and it's all about McLaren trying to stitch up that constructors title now, isn't it? But the driver's really gone. Overall for the weekend, you've got to say a really brilliant sprint race, a really good qualifying in the end, but the race was just so bad. I've given him a 5 out of 10 in the end. 7th place man, Yuki Tsunoda, and he had a brilliant Sunday, didn't he, actually? Qualified his career best P3, and well, from there on he held on really well, didn't he, up into this. We got called in, one of the ones that went on to the wets. That didn't really work out for him. The red flag just, absolutely set him back, put him back into P8. Made up a position, and then, I think that's a really good, solid result. Splits the McLarens, probably better than he can hope for. Yuki is the man at the moment, isn't he? I love this guy. I think it was a really solid weekend from him. He's probably disappointed when he looks at what the Alpines did. Could he have done that? But this team called a strategy call. It was, you got to brave it, or things just happen sometimes, don't they? But yeah, it was a bad call to call him in early on. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 because I thought he was absolutely really, really good. Yuki Tsunoda. 8th place man, Oscar Piastri, and this is another one. He had a horrible qualifying session, didn't he? Started way back in 8th, and the race didn't get any better for him at all. He had a 10-second penalty for his collision with Liam Lawson, and then behind Norris, couldn't get or keep past Yuki Tsunoda. I think it was one of his worst weekends, and he just left a massive open door, didn't he, where we thought potentially he could take one for the team and hold up Max Verstappen a little bit. But at that stage in the race, he was ridiculously slow, so much slower than Norris, who was quite a bit slower than the Red Bulls and the guys leading up front. And so, a weekend to forget for him. It's just not been good. With that big penalty, he dropped back to place. I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. Oscar Piastri, just not a great weekend for him. 9th place, Liam Lawson, and he, another one, had a really good qualifying session, put himself up into P5 despite being outshone by Yuki Tsunoda, but you can't sniff at a 5th place start in that car. But his race start wasn't good, was he? Lost places to Charles Leclerc, and then he got passed by Max Verstappen. He was P7 lap 15, and then he made that mistake on lap 25. Got in the incident as well, didn't he, where he got tapped and spun around by Oscar Piastri, dropped back down to P11. And then if you look at the race, to come back and take a couple of points in quite an eventful race, I think you can be fairly happy with that. I think he'll be disappointed still, though, of what could have been. I think, especially when teams like this look at the Alpines and what they pulled off. It is more of what could have been for us, I suppose. But after an eventful race, he held off Lewis Hamilton, who was charging and all over the back of him. It's a hard one to judge, this one, but I'm going to go for a 5 out of 10 for Liam Lawson. 10th place finish for Lewis Hamilton, and he had, well, a topsy-turvy race, didn't he? He had, like Max Verstappen, a brilliant start, made up 4 places, was up to P11 from his poor qualifying in P15, but from there on, he made a mistake. The car he was struggling, wasn't he? He went wide at the last corner, lost a couple of places to the Williams Franco Colapinto, then made up some places, again got himself back up the field, and then made another mistake, dropped back down to P15, back to where he started at one point in the race, and then he was on a charge back through, managed to get past Sergio Perez when he made that mistake, or his little battle with Charles Leclerc, and he absolutely made the most of that, didn't he? Made the pass and then held him off for a little bit, and then was on a charge to just try and make up that place to Liam Lawson. Couldn't do so in the end. He just was absolutely, really just almost distraught, wasn't he, with this car? He was like, this is the worst car I've ever had all season. It's a plank. Yeah, wish I could just go on a holiday from here. Would we see him, the rumours of would we see him for the rest of the season? It's, you know, Mercedes have got the young man, Antonelli, waiting to take that seat. Could they put him in early? Mercedes have written that rumour off. That's not happening. Lewis Hamilton will stay in the car for the remainder of the season, but this is one horrible weekend for him in Brazil. The highlight really only being him driving Ayrton Senna's car at the start of the race, which was absolutely brilliant to see. It looked fantastic, that look going around. Especially if you've been to the F1 exhibition in London, you can see that car there. I was very lucky enough to do that and see that there. More on my video on that to come. But for Lewis Hamilton, a 4 out of 10 wasn't very good at all. One of his real disappointing races of his career, in fact, wasn't it? Not good at all. 11th place finish, Sergio Perez, and he just had an awful race again, didn't he? Lap 1 spun all on his own, and that really set him back. I mean, he started 12th as it was behind Max very early on, and then went in lap 11, was one of the first ones to pit for the wets, didn't he? And that was, not sure why they did that, the team, actually, when they sort of risked it with Max Verstappen. I'm not sure why they went for the complete opposite strategy with Sergio Perez, unless it was just a pure driver call to say, I'm really struggling here, I'm going to crash this car, let me come in and take the wets. It looked like it would be the right call, actually. It was 6-7 seconds faster than the leaders, wasn't he, on that, when the rain really came down. And yeah, the kind of, I think, the premature call for the safety car at that stage when the rain was coming down to make them go even slower and struggle. Yes, we got the Franco Colapinto crash, but again, I think they should have just waited for more cars to go on to the wets, and if they're struggling then with aquaplaning and all the rest, then fair enough, call in the safety car and, you know, potentially call a stop to the race like we saw in the end. But until everybody's on wets, I don't think we should have this scenario of where we call in the safety car because of dangerous wet conditions and drivers complaining how slippery it is when you're on the wrong tyre. But enough of that rant. Back to Sergio Perez. Yeah, Christian Horner was really kind of just annoyed with his driving, wasn't he? He sort of said like his first lap spin was annoying, he just struggled. We just didn't see anything from Sergio Perez. He got beaten by Liam Lawson, who he seems ever connected to, isn't he, in this Red Bull Racing Bulls battle with him. I mean, he left the door wide open for Max Verstappen, but then as soon as Sergio Perez came along, he was sort of broad shoulders and blocking everything he can. I mean, I guess that's who his race is with, and Sergio Perez really shouldn't be in a race with him at all. Got passed by Lewis Hamilton when he was really trying to make a move on the Ferrari up in front, and just poor racecraft, poor confidence from Sergio Perez, and it's just showing in almost everything that he's doing. It's just not got better at any stage in the season, and for them to back him and give him that new contract looks even more strange and a really bizarre decision now, isn't it? That it was only back in Miami after a string of poor performances that he's got this contract, and I can't think of one performance bar Baku where he was really good but then crashed it and lost a podium, unfortunately. Where he's been good, there's just not been one performance. This weekend really poor again. I've given him a 1 out of 10. 12th place man, Ole Burmeister, and he started in 16th, finished in 12th. He had a difficult weekend overall, didn't he? He got a 10-second penalty for his collision with Franco Colapinto. He had, what, 7 spins this weekend? I felt, yeah, it was just a difficult weekend for him overall. It's a difficult weekend when you come to Brazil. You see champions like Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso struggling in difficult cars to drive to pull it off. Yes, we've got the exception of Max Verstappen, but he was phenomenal. And Ole, yes, it's been a difficult experience, quite a few mistakes, a bit of a reality check of what Formula One is really going to be like, but yeah, difficult. Got to the end is probably the only positive that I can put, and that's the only thing that I put on the notes for Ole Burmeister was he got to the end. It was a difficult race. We've seen other juniors spin, crash, fail. The fact that, yes, he spun and kept it out of the wall. Had he just had less of them, there was potential for a P10. That's kind of what all the young other kids have done, where or guys that just made it to the end and kept all four wheels pointing in the right direction. You know, there was possible for a point, not for Ole this time, but a massive learning experience for him. I've given him a 3 out of 10. Wasn't a good weekend for him at all. 13th place finish for Valtteri Bottas, and yes, this is the last we'll see of him this season, isn't it? He's been given the boot from Sauber. More on that in my next video coming up. But yeah, a P11 start I think was probably a really good qualifying session from Valtteri. In the race though, he was back to last, P17 on lap 15. Had a real struggle of a race, and then actually the safety car and things worked well for him, didn't he? He was back up to P11, but then dropped down. He was back to P13 by lap 51. This was kind of the day for them potentially to nick a point, wasn't it, Sauber? They're the only team without any points. And if they're not taking points on races like this, I don't think there'll be any opportunity for them to take points. Bottas, I think he did well overall in the end. The car is absolutely stinking, isn't it? It was so slow. It was miles off the pace. The pair of him and Joe were so far back from everybody else. They were driving different Formula cars, it looked like, at one point. Yeah, Valtteri is a massively experienced guy. It's a shame he won't be on the grid next season. He's been a reformed character since we've seen him come into the Sauber team, more of himself compared to what we saw at Mercedes. He kind of went into his shell a little bit there, didn't he, towards the end especially. It's a shame he won't be on the grid, but I think he wasn't really doing anything massively to set that alight. And Sauber now with a more experienced guy in Nico Hulkenberg, they've gone for someone completely different on that front. Watch out for the video there, like I said. But for this weekend, a 5 out of 10 for Valtteri. Next up, Fernando Alonso, P14, and he had a real struggle of a weekend. Qualifying was, I think, decent, I suppose, when you put him with P9. Yes, he was one of the guys to cause a red flag. He had just a difficult weekend for Aston Martin overall, didn't they? Crashes and cars to repair before the race. In the race, Fernando Alonso was doing actually quite well, wasn't he? Just up into the points, P10, and then he had that spin, dropped him down to 15th. And at the end of the race, he was just saying he really struggled with his back. I mean, so much so he went to the medical centre after the race to see and get some help on that, because he was really struggling with back pain issues. And just sort of came on the radio to say, look, I'm only completing this race for the mechanics, which is not finite like the fighter Fernando that we know, is he? Normally would fight for everything right to the very end. Shows how much that car was an absolute dog, and he was really struggling. A poor weekend for Aston Martin, not a great week for Fernando Alonso. A 4 out of 10 for me. And 15th place man, Zhou Guanyu. Who else? I guess he can say he finished the race more than the other 5 guys that dropped out of the race. But he was massively slower. I made a note, it was 16 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas on lap 25. That's how slow he was. That's how much of a struggle it was for him. Managed to get a lap ahead of Fernando Alonso at lap 51, and that's only because Fernando Alonso spun. He had, 16 seconds or so to Fernando, and Fernando's managed to gain up that, pass him with a bad back, and yeah, couldn't get close to Bottas, got beaten by a poor Fernando Alonso with a struggling back. It's just not been good at all for Zhou Guanyu, and performances like this weren't ever going to help him get that seat. We know he's out of that seat. I've gone for a 2 out of 10 for him. A quick one on the DNFs. Alex Albon didn't start the race because of his crash in qualifying. Massive shame for him, because the way the race went, potentially we could have seen Alex even up on that podium. He was quick in the race, so massive disappointment there. No rating for him. Lance Stroll didn't complete the formation lap. I would normally say no rating, but this guy, to do that, I mean, he'd kept it out of the wall, little brush, wasn't in the gravel truck, managed to spin and self-sabotage. I feel so sorry for the mechanics that worked so hard to put that car on the grid, and for him to do that, just absolutely shocking. I'm giving him a 0 out of 10 because it was actually so poor. Nico Hulkenberg next up, he had the DNF or black flag, didn't he, because he got some assistant, got beached with a spin, then got pushed back on track, got the black flag for assistance to carry on. No rating for Nico Hulkenberg. There was a DNF for Carlos Sainz also, and he had a horrible Sunday, didn't he? The qualifying shunt meant he needed a power unit and gearbox change. He dropped back and started P15, and then got that spin and caused a safety car. It was a really difficult weekend for him, and he said he just wasn't sure what caused any of the 2 spins for taking him out over the 2 sessions and qualifying and the race. A horrible weekend for him. 3 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. And then finally, the last DNF for Franco Colapinto with that big crash, lap 32, wasn't he, down the straight. 2 crashes in a day for him, and big damage. Not a good weekend for the Williams team, not a good weekend for him really. Kind of struggled an awful lot with massive hype, big pressure with all the supporting fans that came from Argentina to Brazil to cheer him on. Not a good weekend for the rookies overall, and he kind of really struggled. I'm giving him a 3 out of 10 also. It wasn't great in the sprint either. Quick look at the predictions review, and well, it's been a mixed sort of bag, hasn't it? For the sprint, I thought it'd be Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen. Verstappen did take 3rd place in the end, but it was Norris and Piastri with a 1-2. Brilliant result from them in sprint, wasn't it? For the qualifying in the race, I thought Lando Norris would be on pole. I did get that one right. Leclerc 2nd and the Sainz 3rd, but little did I expect to see Russell and Tsunoda, most definitely not Tsunoda, in 3rd place. And for the race, I had Norris, Leclerc and Verstappen, and well, completely wrong on that one. And anybody who predicted this top 3 would, you've won the lottery, hasn't you, with Verstappen, Ocon and Gasly in the top 3 on the race. I thought it'd be a good weekend for Ferrari. It absolutely wasn't, was it? Both cars struggled. And I thought it'd be a bad weekend for Haas, and well, I kind of take all the credit for that one. Kevin Magnussen didn't make the start. He struggled. Ole Burmeister struggled as well. And Nico Hulkenberg out in the race. No points for them. And massive now in a battle with Alpine for them. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. We head now for a break before Vegas. It should be a fantastic week of racing there. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment as always. See you next time. Welcome guys. It's that time. We go through and rate each and every one of the drivers. How they got over. Did they get over it? But they don't think Lando Norris will get over it.